911, what is your emergency?
Yeah, hi, this is gonna sound kinda strange, but there's a man stumbling around in circles in my front yard.
Could you repeat that, sir?
He looks sick, or lost, or drunk, or something. I woke up to get a glass of water and heard snow crunching around underneath my front window, so I peeked out. I'm looking at him right now. He's about 10 yards away from my window. Something's not right.
What is your address, sir?
1617 Quarry Lane in Pinella Pass.
I'm going to send a squad car your way, but that's quite a ways out. Are you alone in your house, sir?
Yes, I'm alone.
Can you confirm that all your doors and windows are locked? Stay on the phone with me.
I know that my front door is definitely locked, but I'll go check my back door again really quick. I appreciate your help, by the way. I know this is kinda strange, but I really hope that...
Sir, are you still there?
He's still in the yard, but he's upside down.
Sir, stay on with me. What is happening?
He's staring right at me, but he's standing on his hands now? He's perfectly still, staring straight at me. He's doing a handstand and he's smiling at me, but he's not moving.
He's doing a handstand, sir?
I don't know how yeah. He's facing me and standing on his hands, and he's got this huge smile, and he's perfectly still. Ooh. Please, get someone out here now.
Sir, I need you to remain calm. I put a call out and an officer is on his way.
His teeth are so huge. What? Please, can you help me?
Sir, I want you to try and keep an eye on him, but make sure the back door is locked again. We need to make sure that all possible access are secured. Can you talk me through and confirm that your back door is locked?
Okay. I'm walking backwards now, and keeping him in my sight. My hand is on the back door knob now. It's locked. I need to check the deadbolt, so I'm gonna take my eyes off of him for a split second.
Alright, sir. Help is on the way. Just stay on the phone with me. Everything's gonna be alright. Sir? Sir, are you still there?
His face. It's up against the glass.
Sir, I need you to speak up. What is happening?
I looked away for a split second and now... His face, it's pressed up against my front window. His teeth are huge. And he's still smiling. There's no color in his eyes. Jesus, please help me. Why won't it just move?
Sir, I need you to go to the nearest room and lock yourself inside of it. Do you have a basement or a bedroom that you can lock yourself in?
He won't stop staring. He's going to hurt me.
Sir, I need you to listen to me. Lock yourself somewhere safe until the officer arrives at your house. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, I'm gonna lock myself in my room.
And you're positive you're alone in the house, correct?
Yes, I'm alone in the house. Wait a moment. He's moving. He's shaking his head. He's telling me no. He can hear us. He's telling me I'm not alone.
Sir? Sir? Are you still there? I heard a loud noise. Is everything alright? Sir?
It was my first night in a new city, and I called my mother to tell her that I had arrived safely. She tells me that the girl I dated when I was 17, as I was now 23, and hadn't heard a peep out of her in 5 years, called out of the blue looking for me, and left her lumber. Lonely and bored, I rang her up and had a strange catch-up session. She told me she was engaged to a woman, and that her life after we broke up was a series of unfortunate events. We hung up on pleasant terms, with no plans to keep in touch. 3 days later, I am exiting my building, and who is standing there in the rain, waiting? Yup, her. She had flown 2,500 miles in the middle of the night because she thought we were destined to be together. She told me how she was so torn up about us not being together that she had pulled out all of her hair. She also bought her fiancé, who was as crazy as she, and was urging my ex to have a baby with me. I calmly tried telling her that this was insane and that I had no interest in any of this, when out of nowhere it all goes black. I wake up to chaos, and my doorman is holding the fiancé down waiting for police. Turns out, she'd hit me on the back of the head with a full bottle of champagne that they'd bought to celebrate with us. Arrests were made and restraining orders followed.
During my childhood, my family was like a drop of water in a vast river, never remaining in one location for long. We settled in Rhode Island when I was 8, and there we remained until I went to college in Colorado Springs. Most of my memories are rooted in Rhode Island, but there are fragments in the attic of my brain which belong to various homes that we had lived in when I was much younger. Most of these memories are unclear and pointless. Chasing after another boy in the backyard of a house in North Carolina, trying to build a raft to float on the creek behind the apartment we rented in Pennsylvania, and so on. But there is one set of memories which remains as clear as glass, as though they were made just yesterday. I often wonder whether these memories are simply lucid dreams produced by the long sickness I experienced that spring, but in my heart, I know they are real. We were living in a house just outside of the bustling metropolis of New Vineyard, Maine. Population 643. It was a large structure, especially for a family of 3. There were a number of rooms that I didn't even see in the 5 months we resided there. In some ways, it was a waste of space, but it was the only house on the market at the time, at least within an hour's commute to my dad's place of work. The day after my 5th birthday, attended by my parents alone, I came down with a fever. The doctor said that I had mononucleosis, which meant no rough play and more fever for at least another 3 weeks. It was horrible timing to be bedridden. We were in the process of packing up our things to move to Pennsylvania, and most of my things were already packed in boxes, leaving my room barren. My mother brought me ginger ale and books several times a day, and these served as the function of being my primary form of entertainment for the next few weeks. Boredom always loomed just around the corner, waiting to rear its ugly head and compound my misery. I don't exactly recall how I met Mr. Widemouth. I think it was about a week after I was diagnosed with mono. My first memory of the small creature was asking him if he had a name. He told me to call him Mr. Widemouth because his mouth was large. In fact, everything about him was large in comparison to his body. His head, his eyes, his crooked ears, but his mouth was by far the largest. "You look kind of like a Furby," I said as he flipped through one of my books. Mr. Widemouth stopped and gave me a puzzled look.
"Furby? What's a Furby?"
I shrugged. "You know, the toy. The little robot with the big ears. You can pet and feed them, almost like a real pet."
"Oh,
Mr. Widemouth resumed his activity.
you don't need one of those. They aren't the same as having a real friend."
I remember Mr. Widemouth disappearing every time my mother stopped by to check in on me.
"I lay under your bed."
He later explained.
I don't want your parents to see me because I'm afraid they won't let us play anymore.
We didn't do much during those first few days. Mr. Widemouth just looked at my books, fascinated by the stories and pictures they contained. The third or fourth month after I met him, he greeted me with a large smile on his face.
I have a new game we can play.
He said,
We'll have to wait until after your mother comes to check on you, 'cause she can't see us play. It's a secret game.
After my mother delivered more books and soda at the usual time, Mr. Widemouth slipped out from under the bed and tugged my hand.
We have to go to the room at the end of this hallway.
He said. I objected at first, as my parents had forbidden me to leave my room without their permission, but Mr. Widemouth persisted until I gave in. The room in question had no furniture or wallpaper. Its only distinguishing feature was a window opposite the doorway. Mr. Widemouth darted across the room and gave the window a firm push, flinging it open. He then beckoned me to look out at the ground below. We were on the second story of the house, but it was on a hill, and from this angle, the drop was farther than the 2 stories due to the incline.
I like to play pretend up here.
Mr. Widemouth explained.
I pretend that there's a big, soft trampoline below this window, and then I jump. If you pretend real hard enough, you'll bounce up like a feather. I want you to try.
I was a 5-year-old with a fever, so only a hint of skepticism darted through my thoughts as I looked down and considered the possibility. It's a long drop, I said.
But that's all a part of the fun. It wouldn't be fun if there was only a short drop. If it was that way, you might as well bounce on a real trampoline.
I toyed with the idea, picturing myself falling through thin air only to bounce back to the window on something unseen by human eyes. But the realist in me prevailed. Maybe some other time, I said. I don't know if I have enough imagination. I could get hurt. Mr. Widemouth's face contorted into a snarl, but only for a moment. Anger gave way to disappointment.
If you say so,
he said. He spent the rest of the day under my bed, quiet as a mouse. The following morning, Mr. Widemouth arrived holding a small box.
I want to teach you how to juggle,
he said.
Here's some things you can use to practice, before I start giving you lessons.
I looked in the box. It was full of knives. My parents will kill me, I shouted, horrified that Mr. Widemouth had brought knives into my room, objects that my parents would never allow me to touch. I'll be spanked and grounded for a year. Mr. Widemouth frowned.
It's fun to juggle with these. I want you to try it.
I pushed the box away. I can't. I'll get in trouble. Knives aren't safe to just throw in the air. Mr. Widemouth's frown deepened into a scowl. He took the box of knives and slid under my bed, remaining there for the rest of the day. I began to wonder how often he was under me. I started having trouble sleeping after that. Mr. Widemouth often woke me up at night, saying he put a real trampoline under the window. A big one that I couldn't see in the dark. I always declined and tried to go back to sleep, but Mr. Widemouth persisted. Sometimes he stayed by my side until early in the morning, encouraging me to jump. He wasn't so fun to play with anymore. My mother came to me one morning and told me I had her permission to walk around outside. She thought the fresh air would be good for me, especially after being confined to my room for so long. Ecstatic, I put on my sneakers and trotted out to the back porch, yearning for the feeling of sun on my face. Mr. Widemouth was waiting for me.
I have something I want you to see,
he said. I must have given him a weird look because he then said,
It's safe. I promise.
I followed him into the beginning of a deer trail which ran through the woods behind the house.
This is a really important path,
he said.
I've had a lot of friends about your age. When they were ready, I took them down this path to a special place. You aren't ready yet, but one day I hope to take you there.
I returned to the house, wondering what kind of place lay beyond that trail. 2 weeks after I met Mr. Widemouth, the last load of our things had been packed into a moving truck. I would be in the cab of that truck, sitting next to my father for the long drive to Pennsylvania. I considered telling Mr. Widemouth that I would be leaving, but even at 5 years old, I was beginning to suspect that perhaps the creature's intentions were not to my benefit, despite what he said otherwise. For this reason, I decided to keep my departure a secret. My father and I were in the truck at 4 a.m. He was hoping to make it to Pennsylvania by lunchtime tomorrow with the help of an endless supply of coffee and a 6-pack of energy drinks. He seemed more like a man who was about to run a marathon rather than one who was about to spend 2 days sitting still. "Early enough for you?" my father asked, with a hint of sympathy. I nodded and placed my head against the window, hoping for some sleep before the sun came up. I felt my father's hand on my shoulder. "This is the last move, son. I promise. I know it's hard for you, as sick as you've been. Once I get promoted, we can settle down and you can make friends." I opened my eyes as we backed out of the driveway. I saw Mr. Widemouth's silhouette in my bedroom window. He stood motionless until the truck was about to turn onto the main road. He gave a pitiful little wave goodbye, steak knife in hand. I didn't wave back. Years later, I returned to New Vineyard. The piece of land our house stood upon was empty except for the foundation, as the house burned down a few years after my family left. Out of curiosity, I followed that deer trail that Mr. Widemouth had shown me. Part of me expected him to jump out from behind a tree and scare the living bejesus out of me, but I felt that Mr. Widemouth was gone, somehow tied to the house that no longer existed. The trail ended at the New Vineyard Memorial Cemetery. I noticed that many of the tombstones belonged to children.
Mortis Media.
There was an abandoned factory near a train station that recently had been torn down. A couple of years ago, when it was still standing, it was dilapidated and tagged all over. It looked nice and abandoned. After crossing the train track and hopping a few fences, we got to where the door once was. It was now a boarded up hole. We cranked our crowbars to get it off, and once we did, we found a huge open space, everything stripped, copper wiring and such. Everything dusty, and wooden bits rotted. It smelled dank and mildewy, and was so dark, and it seemed like no one had stepped in there for years. This factory was huge. We decided to pop out from wherever we had, and came to explore another side. Once myself and my 3 friends came out, we searched along the sides to find another entrance. Then, the flashlight pointed at us. The cops don't need a trespassing charge. Then, oh, he has a gun. I wish this was a cop, and threat of a charge. We were huddled behind a hunk of scrap, and he was bellowing for us to get out. The fear I felt at that moment was unreal. Shaking, clammy, we stepped out. He pointed this bright-ass flashlight at us. His demanding voice went from a low growl to a more frantic, pissed-off one. "Who the hell are you, and what are you doing here? Do you know where you are?" One of us, the calmest in our misguided Scooby gang, said confidently that we will leave and never return, and to please allow us to. He says he'll walk us out, which was less walking us out, more so blinding us with his flashlight, and directing us to jump the fences and walk away, with his gun pointed at us. Having my back turned towards this weapon-wielding man was terrifying. My option was to do what he said, and hope that he wouldn't shoot. the obvious one. But having to trust that he wouldn't mess us up while vulnerably climbing the chain link fence in the dark will always stay with me. I don't know if there were people maybe taking meth, or what was being done in that factory by its apparent occupants. It's gone now, but that memory gives me chills whenever I pass there. I have a few more instances with abandoned places, but this was the most traumatizing. On another occasion, the same group of friends and I would visit this big, multi-level building that was up in the mountains. It was supposed to be a rec center or country club, but it was stopped in the midst of construction because of the outdated and hazardous materials being used. I believe this was because of asbestos, and a building was built elsewhere, but this one remained because of financial reasons. On the drive to get there, you pass by some beautiful mountain homes, and then up a half-mile long dirt road, but without any lights on, as not to disturb the neighborhood. We would go into this concreted metal structure late at night, breaking open glow sticks and flinging them around the rooms, and spray painting it. We frequented it until this incident. The group that had gone there was smaller than our usual, 4 or 5, and was just me and 2 other friends. We were equipped with a lantern, a flashlight, and just going to hang out. The entrance were these huge metal doors. They were extremely heavy, and it took the 2 of us to push very hard to move them even a little bit. They were always open. Everything looked normal. Usual amounts of cigarette butts and general trash. Doors open, no other cars or anything around. Everything looked as if no one was there. We entered into a room about the size of a bedroom. That is directly to the right. This one is so dark and small compared to the vast open spaces of the lower levels. So naturally, the most fun to spray glow sticks and have glow-in-the-dark tin. There is a comically creepy book that is a pretty old children's book sitting there. It's about Mother Goose and tells little tales that we've all heard. The illustrations are super weird looking. Anyway, who doesn't love getting scared? So one of my friends picks it up, because we're into this creepy book that we found and are probably going to keep it. We keep walking around the inside and hear squeaks and screeches. This is in the mountains, and this is an old building. Whenever we heard noises, our minds go to 2 places. It was either 1, an animal or bug, or a clanky piece of metal, as these things were heavy, or 2, we are in an abandoned place at night. Anything heard is going to be scary. We all smoked at the time, and went outside to the stairway that goes into a hole where there is a locked door. Sat on the stairs and smoked. We heard a little high-pitched scream that almost sounded like it could be from a magpie. It creeped us out, and then we began to hear rustling and some sort of soft clomping. Very rhythmic. Almost seemed to be too much for people walking, but probably there was another person here. So we decided to scope it out. We carefully walked the perimeter, but see no people, no cars, nothing indicating that someone else would be there. When we walked to the entrance, my friend jokes that the book is haunted and causing these disturbances. She says that she better give it back to the ghost so it won't get mad or something, and throws it towards the entrance. It lands, opens, and flips a couple of pages. The night was still very still, not breezy or windy, and we started to freak out. We feel a little unsettled and unsure if we should go back in. We also lost our lighter, so we only had our flashlights as we couldn't light our lantern anymore. Then, this huge creak. One of the doors is shut. How that happened without us hearing is beyond my comprehension, as we would have definitely heard it. It's extremely loud. The other door, this heavy-ass door that is hard to move even one bit, is closing on its own, fairly quickly, and glides shut with a loud bang that makes us all jump. We booked it at that point, ran into the car, and never went back. It doesn't seem that scary to recount, but when I think about what I saw, I feel sick. I have horrible nightmares about this place, when the outcome is much more grisly, so that doesn't help.